And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. I'm Chip Patterson. Just happy Wednesday to you. Bowl season daily marches on. If you are new to this, then we have for you a short form episode every single morning hitting the feed so that you can get all the information you need for your bowl bets, everything that you need for watching, even as a casual viewer, what you need to know for that day, for that day's bowl games. It's Bowl Season Daily on the Cover 3 podcast. We come at you every single morning. Subscribers have it in their feed when they wake up. So subscribe to the Cover 3 podcast wherever you get your podcasts, youtube.com/cover3 for that multi-platform excellence. Happy Wednesday to you as well, Tom Fornelli. We begin in New Orleans for the R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. Louisiana Tech against Georgia Southern. This is a spot where we have sent the Sun Belt champion before, but that is not the case this year. Louisiana Tech from Conference USA, Georgia Southern from the Sun Belt. It's a game where, like, Louisiana Tech is always in the bowl season. Like, say what you want about Skip Holtz, man. He will get the Bulldogs to the postseason. But as we look at the matchup, I find it interesting because we go through what Louisiana Tech did this year, and TCU was one of its more lopsided results, right? 52-10 loss to the Horned Frogs. In that game, the Horned Frogs ran for 333 yards. So immediately, I think Louisiana Tech run defense, perhaps a little bit suspect. Here comes a triple option team in Georgia Southern. So, before we jump into Memphis-FAU, the later game, what do you think about this afternoon tilt, and what do you think about the matchup?
It's an interesting matchup because of what you just mentioned, with Georgia Southern being an option team going against Louisiana Tech, whose rush defense got torn apart. And it's always interesting to see, option offenses going against teams like this, particularly when there's not as much time to prepare for it like there might be in a regular bowl season. But for me, what's most interesting looking at this matchup is we don't know who Georgia Southern's going to have at quarterback. Shai Werts has been their quarterback all season long, and he's a very good player, but he's been banged up. He missed their last game against App State. He's apparently been practicing, but we don't know for sure whether he's going to play. And their backup, whose name is completely escaping me, was already hurt. So they might be without their top two QBs. They might be turning to a freshman making his very first start against Louisiana Tech here. So that is definitely something, if you're thinking of betting on this game today, that you need to keep an eye on. But on the flip side, Louisiana Tech is also down to its backup quarterback, as Luke Anthony got hurt earlier this year. But the good news there is that their backup has played before and has been preparing for this game the entire time. So that kind of offsets it. So when I look at the matchup, if Shai Werts isn't playing, I have a really difficult time trusting Georgia Southern in this matchup as a favorite. And to be frank, I was kind of leaning Louisiana Tech anyway because of the situation with the quarterback spot. But also, like you mentioned, Skip Holtz. Like, not only does he get teams to bowl games, but one of the things you always have to consider when it comes to betting a bowl game's motivation is just how seriously some coaches take bowl games compared to other coaches. Because some coaches just look at them as maybe, a couple weeks of practice, and we'll get some scrimmaging in, and we'll get some players some time and see what we got heading into next year, especially in games like this one, which aren't exactly, marquee, not too much on the line. Skip Holtz, as a coach in bowl games, 8-3 against the spread. So he takes it seriously. He prepares his teams for a regular game. His teams tend to do well. So those are a couple things where when I look at this matchup, if Werts plays, I like Southern's chances a lot better. I still don't like him overall. If he doesn't play, I think that you should take Louisiana Tech on the money line.
Yeah, so Shai Werts is the starting quarterback who's pretty good. Justin Tomlin was the second stringer who got hurt.
There we go.
Which forced Wofford transfer Miller Mosley into action against App State at the end of the season. Kind of a difficult position for the Wofford transfer because they were behind, which meant Georgia Southern had to throw the ball, and that's not exactly what they're built to do. Mosley was 5 for 14 throwing the ball for 122 yards and a touchdown with 2 interceptions. Also ran the ball 13 times for 49 yards in that 8-point loss to the Mountaineers. I'm with you. I think you got to take Louisiana Tech here. And I think that you've got to trust that even though that defense got shredded by TCU earlier in the season, that maybe you're going to be able to have the opportunity facing against a backup quarterback. But as always, be sure to check all your availability before you get your bets in. Would you attack the total on this one? We're looking at around 50, 40.
Yeah. Again, I think if Wirtz plays, I mean, you can find it 48.5, 49 some places. If Wirtz plays, I think the over could be pretty smart because I do think that Georgia Southern's offense will be able to get stuff going against Louisiana Tech. And I do think on the flip side, the Bulldogs are obviously going to be able to get some points in that matchup too. So if Wirtz plays, I like the over. If he doesn't, I would probably just ignore the total because I don't know what Georgia Southern's offense is really going to look like at that point. And I don't want to be overly reliant on the Bulldogs to score all the points.
Good call. That's a 3 p.m. kickoff from the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in New Orleans, the R&L Carriers New Orleans Bowl, Louisiana Tech, and Georgia Southern. The night game, 7 p.m. kickoff from the Crampton Bowl in Montgomery, Alabama. It's Memphis and FAU. It is a battle of first-year coaches, and the link is hilarious. Like, this is an NCAA tournament selection committee level of hilarious with the way that, they say they don't try to put together the storylines, but there are the storylines because Memphis coach Ryan Silverfield only got his job as head coach of the Memphis Tigers because FAU coach Willie Taggart was fired from his old job. So we get Silverfield and the Tigers going up against Taggart and FAU. As we're looking at it, you could find that line probably hovering around 9 points in favor of the Tigers and an over-under of around 51. Outside of the outside of the head coaching storylines here, we've got a Memphis team that, like, the good from Memphis is you beat UCF. I feel like that was just sort of like one thing that Memphis can really hang its hat on. They had a 13-game losing streak to the Knights. And, hey, Brady White's playing, right? He's got to be.
I believe so.
Okay.
If he's out, I haven't heard anything to the contrary yet.
I mean, he's a 9th-year starting quarterback. If you've made it this far, you got to at least get one more bowl game. And I swear, if that man comes back with the NCAA allowed eligibility for another year, goodness gracious. And so, even with no Damani Coxey, even with no Kenneth Gainwell, both of them opted out for the season. The offense still found ways to click a little bit with Brady White at the helm. FAU, let's see. Kind of a defensive team on the sneak, even though Willie Taggart was like obviously an offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh and maybe even for Jack Harbaugh too, but offensive minded, we sort of put him in that tree. But I kind of thought that the reason the Owls were successful was because of the other side of the ball this year.
Yeah, because truth be told, I have not, because Florida Atlantic season has been so strange with all the cancellations and postponements. I think I've seen maybe a half of football with the Owls this year. So I can't do much with my eyes, but looking at the numbers, I kind of have to agree with your assessment on this one because offensively, this is a team that really, really likes to run the ball. Like they run the ball 61% of the time. That's the 13th most often in the country. It's just when you look at success rate, they're not particularly good at it. Like they rank in the bottom third of teams in success rate rushing. And that's the same thing with Memphis, who they are more of a passing team this year, at least they have been, but they have not been a very good rushing team either. And both of these defenses, kind of to the contrary of what you think, especially with what we've seen from Memphis in recent years and in FAU in recent years, have both been very good defensively against the run. So I look at this matchup and I see that's kind of what FAU thinks its strength is, although it's not, going against what is Memphis's defensive strength in being able to stop the run. And I don't know if the Owls are good enough in the passing game to really attack this Memphis defense in the kind of way that they would have to. And if Brady White is playing, I do think that the Tigers can get some points on the Owls. So I look at this matchup, and frankly, it's nothing against the Owls, who's, like I said, their season's kind of stopped and started, and it's been really hard for them to get a really read or any kind of rhythm going this year. I think Memphis is a team that is kind of we talked about on yesterday's show with UCF. It's flown under the radar, surprisingly, considering how good. I mean, this is a team that was in the Cotton Bowl last year. But if we think of how their season started, where they had a lot of players opting out, Kenneth Gainwell right before the season starts, he's out. A couple weeks in, they lose more players. The first month of the season for them was just kind of like trying to figure out who the hell is going to be taking over key roles. And they found that as the season went on, and they've played really well since then. And I look at this matchup and I just look it up and down the rosters and I'm comparing them. And it's hard for me to find a spot where I feel like the Owls have an advantage on Memphis in this one. So I think that as long as Brady's playing, as long as we're not hearing any, but shortly before the game starts, we're hearing about 20 players who are going to miss the game for the Tigers. To me, I know it's a large spread, but Memphis seems like the obvious play to me here on this spread. Yeah.
Okay. I've got the other side of this because, and number one, I don't hate the under, especially with market preconceived notions versus, what you actually know about what these teams have been so far. And so from that angle, I think that under is probably what I endorse the most, especially if you can get it north of the key number of 49. But let me just, let's go through Memphis's win. 13-point win against Arkansas State. That is the first result of the season. But then it's a 1-point win against UCF. 12-point win against Temple, but that is a 1-win Temple team. Very bad Temple team this year. 1-point win against my beloved USF Bulls. They blew out Stephen F. Austin, stone cold, but that's a FCS thing. I'll throw it out. A 3-point win against Navy and a 3-point win against Houston. And so I posit that Memphis hasn't really blown a lot of teams out. Even some bad teams, it hasn't really like asking to cover 8.5 in a bowl game. I think you got to show me something. So I endorse the under most of all, but if you want to take FAU plus the 8.5 or the 9 points on the argument that this is not a Memphis team that has shown us this year that they are capable of winning by 14 plus points, then I don't hate that.
But I would counter with, if we look at FAU, it was a 21-point win over UTSA, which is a pretty respectable win. I think the Roadrunners are a pretty decent Conference USA team. But then it was a 10-6 win over Western Kentucky, 19-point win over a really bad FIU team that was literally, I think FIU had more games canceled than they played this year. 24-2 win over UMass, which if you only score 24 points against UMass, there's something wrong, because that might be the worst team of all time. And then you look at their losses. They only scored 9 points against Marshall, good team. They only scored 3 points against Georgia Southern, a Sun Belt team that went 7-5. And then they only scored 31 points against the Southern Miss team in the final game of the year, who is on, I think, their 19th coach. So I don't think the Owls are all that good either. Because like I said, when you look at their numbers, they want to run the ball, but they don't do it well. And Memphis is really good at stopping the run. So I think matchup wise, you're right that Memphis hasn't really taken care of a lot of teams this year. I just think that based on the numbers, this is a bad matchup for the Owls. I could be 1,000,000% wrong though.
Under. That's what I hear.
I think you're probably right. It's just, me, I love unders, but in bowl season, they become somewhat of a scary proposition.
They can be absolutely terrifying. But I still want to get my last sweats in here, even at the end of the season. Make sure that you subscribe to the Cover 3 podcast for bowl season daily. We will be back in your feed tomorrow, Thursday morning, with a look at the New Mexico Bowl. It's going to be Hawaii and Houston. And if you want to talk about a game you would be sweating an under for, Hawaii and Houston is right up there. We'll have a more detailed breakdown of that action from Frisco, Texas, in the New Mexico Bowl relocated Hawaii and Houston. So make sure you subscribe to the Cover 3 podcast. Follow him on Twitter at Tom Fornelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you.